Hello, everybody. I am ready to break down this Odyssey trailer. I know you guys have seen it. It took me a minute to gather some images, but I am so stoked. I was a little bit hesitant about some of the other clips that I've seen, but this one today, it locked it down for me. I'm so excited. Let's get into it. All right. I'm going all in on this one. This character with the vertebrae on the helm, I believe, is Neoptolemus. And let me tell you why. First of all, this is too young to be Agamemnon. You can see by the face that it's a young face. It's too young to be Agamemnon. It looks like somebody that is maybe, late teens, 20, but it's a big person, but it's too young to be Agamemnon. And Agamemnon would be as old as Odysseus and probably a little bit older. So it's not Agamemnon. And let's just break down all the imagery behind this figure and why I think. So first of all, this figure is all dressed in black. He has the crest, the black crest, and those vertebrae are fantasy element, yes, but those vertebrae are signifying death and ruthlessness and a terrifying figure, somebody you don't want to fuck with, you know what I mean? And behind him, look at all those warriors. Those are the Myrmidons. They're all dressed in black. They're black capes. They are black crest helms. You can see the ships back there. This just screams Myrmidon, right? And there's only two people that the Myrmidons are going to follow: Achilles, but he's already dead at this point, and I'll get into it, or Neoptolemus. Christopher Nolan is giving us an Odyssey. He's not a brand new story. I think he's not going to try to reinvent characters like Achilles or Agamemnon because they've already been done in the movie Troy. We saw so many scenes with Agamemnon and Menelaus and even and kind of Odysseus, but we didn't really get all. Odysseus has his own story. Obviously, we're watching the Odyssey. He's not going to try and recreate any of that. I did think that maybe it was Ares, and that's the only other option that seemed like it could make sense. But I don't think that this character is Ares because he's not big enough. He's not giving us a god presence. He's filling up the space. It feels very powerful, and a little bit terrifying with this very serious visage. And I believe that the double gold lion brooches right there, that's just screams Achilles bloodline to me right there. And Achilles was a lion, right? And the only other person that could bear that would be Neoptolemus. And Neoptolemus is the character that in the story Odysseus has to go get Neoptolemus from Skyros and convince him to come to Troy and fight. Neoptolemus was not under pressure from the oath of Tyndareus, and neither was Achilles, by the way. Achilles didn't have to leave Phthia. He didn't have to go to the war, but he wanted to because he had a dual destiny that he needed to figure out, and that was the long life or the short life, and one with glory and one without. So he was not under the oath, and neither is Neoptolemus. He was a little baby. He didn't fall under that oath. So Odysseus has to basically beg, connive, convince Neoptolemus to come back to come to Troy and help them win against the Trojans, because the prophecy that was given after Achilles' death was that Troy would not fall unless there was Achilles or Achilles' bloodline was at the forefront. So Neoptolemus would be a brand new character to give us a fresh view of this scene, because they're obviously going into the Trojan horse part of it, because Nolan knows that that's the first thing that people think about when they think about clever Odysseus, wily Odysseus, that he was a strategist and he was a builder. Basically, I had to throw I had to throw in a little Red Rising in there. I am no builder, said Ragnar, but Odysseus was a builder. Anyway, I digress. So These look like the Myrmidons, and that fresh character of Neoptolemus. Neoptolemus is actually in the Trojan horse, and so I think Nolan is marrying those two stories together the way that we haven't seen them before, and we haven't met Neoptolemus before, and this is going to be pretty exciting uh, to see. And I think of all of the things that I have seen, this one probably has got me the most stoked, and I will be there watching this film because I really need to see who this is. My God, can you imagine like what a surprise that's going to be to boop, drop down and Neoptolemus? Yeah, I'm all about it. Okay, the next image that I want to look at is the Trojan horse is being pulled out of the water. This is probably the Trojans pulling the horse out of the water. I never really thought about, you know, representing. We see like the horse on the wheels, or the horse being pulled over logs, something like that. I never thought about it being in the water, but that would kind of make sense. And all of these men, I mean, it could be the Greeks as they built, but why would they build it in the water? I don't know. Obviously this is the Trojan beach, and I'm going with this is likely the Trojans pulling it out. So we're getting that scene because the men are going to be inside, right? And inside should be Odysseus and Neoptolemus, which is why I keep going back to the Neoptolemus on that other character. But anyway, we have this scene, so we're obviously getting a big Trojan horse section, which is pretty exciting. This is inside the horse, and you can see Odysseus right there in the mix, and they are getting jostled around in this scene. We don't know who's who, I don't think, in this scene, but definitely we've got Odysseus. He is the mastermind. He's credited with being the mastermind of this strategy. A couple of things about the Trojan horse. In the Iliad, we have Helen beneath the horse calling out all of the names of the men, and in the voice of their wives, trying to get them to sort of give themselves up. And in this scene, in the clip, we see them being jostled around. So it could be related to that scene where they're getting pulled out of the water, and that's what they're being jostled around. A hand is coming up over somebody's mouth to, be quiet. Because if they get discovered, they're going to get massacred. This is a suicide mission at any point. If the Trojans at any point think that there's actually somebody inside the horse, all they got to do is like catch it on fire, open it up, and they're going to be outnumbered and they're going to die. So this is a pivotal scene, and I'm glad we're getting this in the whole jostling around part. But definitely we see Odysseus in there. Neoptolemus should also be in there, because the prophecy is that Troy cannot fall unless Neoptolemus is there. Period. That end of story. That's why I keep going back to Neoptolemus. And another scene. So we have them sailing to the underworld. What I like about this is we have 3 ships. When Odysseus left Troy, he had 12 ships, about 50 men on each. So we got 600 men. I don't, and there's a few scenes where we see these 3 ships. So we're not going to get the 12. We got 3, which is better than just 1, I guess, right? And this scene looked like it's them sailing to the underworld, and the one right there in the middle with Odysseus with his sword out, and they're have a fire going. It looks like they're setting a fire, making the sacrifices that they need to make for the specters in the underworld. And these figures pop up, and there's a scene in the clip where you see like hands coming up out of the ground, and then these figures like pop up, and you could tell that there's a cape sweeping around, and Odysseus and his men are surprised and afraid. That's just screams all of the underworld. These men that pop up, the one on this one right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but this one right there, I think that's Achilles. We know in the Odyssey that when he goes to the underworld, he talks to several figures, but this one is definitely a warrior, and he does have a conversation with Achilles, and he says, "Oh my God, there you are, Achilles! Like, you're king of the underworld. You're king of the dead." And Achilles is like, "Why? What kind of accolades is that? That's nothing. Like, I'm down here with the dead. I don't really have any power. I'd rather still be alive." So, in another clip of this film, we hear Odysseus saying, "What can I learn from the dead?" You can learn a lot of things, Odysseus, because first of all, you're gonna talk to Achilles, and he's gonna tell you about life is more precious, life is more valuable, that glory was fake, that it doesn't mean anything down here in the underworld. And so I'm pretty sure this is going to be Achilles. Now, I lined up their helmets so that you could see again who I think is Neoptolemus and who I think is Achilles. Their helms look the same. They have the same black plume up there along the crest. Of course, the Achilles is all beat up because he's in the underworld, but that looks very similar to me. And none of the other characters, like the one with the Trojan War, where I think the Trojan horse is, their helmets are flat. They didn't have the crest. That's why I think they're Trojans. But this looks very similar because Achilles is a Myrmidon, Neoptolemus is a Myrmidon, and they're all in black, and the crests are the same. And all of Odysseus' men were wearing red. They have a different color of crest. So that's another reason why I think that that's Neoptolemus. But I'm pretty sure that this is going to be Achilles. So Achilles, then he talks to Achilles and learns about the preciousness of life. And the other character that he talks to in the underworld is Anticlea, his mother, and she's the one who tells him to hurry home because suitors are going after your wife and eating you out of house and home. So anyway, I'm very excited to see how Nolan is representing this underworld for us. And the next clips, the next part of the clips are showing these two shorelines. They're very different. They're two different places. And most of the time when people think of the Odyssey, they think of the excerpts that they had to read when they were in high school. Or we saw in the 1998 version, I think, with Armando Santi. I'm pretty sure that's who that was, right? But anyway, we see that version, and we only get a few places that Odysseus hits. But I think that the one on the very top, you've got about 15 men running for their life down this hillside, heading to the ships, and there's 3 ships there. There's still 3 ships, so I think it's one of 2 things. I think first it might be the Cicones, and the Cicones is the place where they first the first place that they pull in to get resupplied, and they make war on the Cicones. They kill all the men, they capture all the women, divide up all the women. The Odyssey goes into great detail. Odysseus talks about how he equally divided up. Look what kind of a good king I am. I'm dividing up all the women with all of the men, and getting all their resupply. And he does try to get all of his men back on the ships and get out of there, but then they won't listen to him. They're the Odyssey says that they were like drunk, basically drinking all the wine. So they were drunk, they weren't listening. And in the early morning hours after they have made war on this town or city, Odysseus wakes to hear a bunch of rumbling, and he goes outside and he looks out to the hills further, away from them, and he recognizes the sound as cavalry. And the Odyssey talks about there were so many coming after them that they were like leaves on the ground, like you couldn't count them. They were outnumbered, and a few Cicones had escaped and gone to a neighboring city and brought in this entire army, or went back to the main area, their main sister city, and brought back an entire army. And Odysseus and his men got pinned down between the water and their ships, and they were fighting for their lives. And so I think that this clip where these guys are running down the hill, that it could be representing the Cicones. So it's that, or the second option could be the Lystrygonians. The Lystrygonians were cannibal eating giants, and all of 12 ships rolled up to this island, and the men go ashore. Odysseus is warning them not to go ashore. He anchors further out than all of the other ships, and he doesn't go inland, but they do. And they meet with these giant cannibals who then chase them down and destroy all of Odysseus's ships. And this is when Odysseus gets down to one ship. So when he faces the Lystragonians is when all his men are massacred, eaten, dead, all of it. And so it's just him and all the men that were left on his ship. So it's probably one of those two places because, again, I think Nolan isn't trying to give us the same old stories that we've already seen. He wants to dig a little deeper and give us stories that maybe most people are not that aware of. They kind of get maybe skipped over a little bit. But anyway, I think that's what the top picture is. The bottom two is, you can see it's a different island, but there's still 3 ships down there. So you can count them, like 1, 2, 3. And this is a forest. This is likely Circe's island of Aea. And that it can't be Calypso's, because when Odysseus rolls up on Calypso, he's by himself. So he's already lost everybody. And that's how he is alone on Calypso's island for all those years. But this is likely Circe's island. So that's what I think he's showing us there. And of course we have Ithaca. How could we not have this beautiful citadel like this? And I love it. You can see that it's clearly an island. There's steep cliffs right there. And you can see the water around this promontory. It sort of reminds me of Rohan a little bit. And in this scene, you can see Penelope and Telemachus talking up on that promontory area, like up on a rampart, right? They're up there talking, and they're very concerned about what's going on. And this might be a scene where Telemachus is saying, I got to go. I need to go find my dad, something like that. There's a couple of scenes that this could be, but I do like that we're seeing this view of Ithaca. And I do also like all these little tents that are along, when you watch the clip. So you'll see like the road, the little road that goes all the way up to the main hall here. And I'm thinking maybe these tents could be the suitors that are just like camping out and hanging out along the road all the way up to Odysseus's and Penelope's home. So I do like that, and I'm glad that we get that view. The last part is that we just talked about. This is the obvious one, right? It is Odysseus and his 12 men that go into the cave, and only 6 come out because 12 go in, and the Cyclops eats 6 of them. And that's why I think the other scene where they're running down the hill, it can't be the Cyclops scene, because we're only supposed to have 12 that go in and 6 that come out. It's just too many men that are running away, unless we don't have the Cyclops eating anybody, or unless we've got, a whole bunch more men going up into the Cyclops cave. But anyway, this is the Cyclops, so I'm kind of excited to see how he's going to like show this part of the story. The Cyclops of Polyphemus. This is the story that a lot of people are probably most familiar with. Anyway, I broke down quite a few scenes. Again, I'm most excited about the Neoptolemus and who that warrior is, all dressed in black. I believe that's the Myrmidons. But to see how Christopher Nolan is going to give us a view of Odysseus through a new lens and through different stories than what we're used to. So I'm pretty excited about that. If in the meantime that you are waiting for getting this Odyssey fix, I host a Greek mythology podcast called Greek Mythology Retold. If you want to check out any of those Trojan War characters that I have up there. And anyway, there's that. If you like to read, I have a series. It's a fantasy Iliad Odyssey inspired 6-book, like, I don't know, project. And the Song of Sacrifice starts out in the pre-Trojan War era. So it carries all of the Achilles' birth and when Paris meets Aphrodite, and we have the golden apple. So we have like all of this, about 20 years prior to the war. And Rise of Princes is when you're in the war. Rage of Queens is in the war toward the end. And the White Island brings it home with the close of the war and the kings who are beginning to return home. And then Legacy of Kings and Song of Spring are taking the Odyssey story all the way home with Neoptolemus and Briseis and Agamemnon, Menelaus, Helen. I've got so many characters in there, Andromache and their children. So it gives us about 4 generations of these characters. So anyway, if you like podcasts, Greek mythology retold, if you like to read the Homeric Chronicles. Anyway, that's it for me. And I'm just very excited for this movie. Christopher Nolan is, I'm sure, going to bring us a fantastic show. At first I got hung up in, costumes weren't historically accurate, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I don't think I really care. Homer was a storyteller. Christopher Nolan is a storyteller. And sometimes when you're telling stories, it's what the characters do and how they interact and what does it mean to be human and what are the lessons that we learn. Those profound things are more important than if Odysseus is wearing a boar bone helmet. Don't get me wrong. I love the historicity of the Bronze Age. I love it. But for the sake of Hollywood, I'm not expecting historical accuracy. I am expecting a good story. I am expecting him to pull out nuances of the Odyssey and Odysseus's character that make us think about either the story or make us think about our own lives and what our purpose is. So anyway, that's it for now. I am excited. I'll see you next time. I'm probably going to make another video about this as other clips pop up. But anyway, that's it for me and Janell Rhiannon, and I will see you next time. Oh, drink your wine and be merry, Myrmidons.